most people think ये startup है क्या, right? And before I get to my 2 cents worth in terms of this global and local, everybody thinks startup is about being fashionable and saying I don't want to work for anybody, I will start my own company, and because everybody is doing it I want to do it. But मेरे लिए स्टार्टअप का एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट ये है कि for what you are trying to do, and the second is you're trying something हो जाएगा, वो तो होता ही है that everybody can do a business, right? Also very well known for innovation. So उसका एक interesting story है. Been in business for 60 years now. My grandfather started it, my father ran it, and then I was expected to run the same business, right? It is in manufacturing, cotton ginning and pressing, oils. And so I went abroad, got a degree, an MBA, came back. The expectation was कि हमारा इतना बड़ा business है तो हमारा business काफी important technology, and so technology का कीड़ा होता है, everywhere you look at a problem you say ये कैसे solve करूँ, इसका मैं क्या solution लेके आऊँ. And it so happened that in 1995 or 96 India introduced internet for the first time. उससे पहले इंडिया में internet connectivity नहीं थी, तो ये connectivity तो आ गई, and I was like one of those guys who rushed to saying finally I'm connected to the rest of the globe, right? I had experienced internet when I was in the US, and when I came back to India, यहाँ पर internet था नहीं, so I was completely disconnected from the rest of the world, so to say. And ये internet आया तो I signed up. I had a computer at home. उस जमाने में बहुत कम लोगों के पास घर पे computer था, right? Computer used to be a thing that people used to have at the office, and got accounting and work done. तो घर पे भी एक computer था, office में तो था ही computer, और factory पे भी एक computer था. And the whole essence of having the connectivity, तीनों जगह connectivity आ गई. तो मेरा प्रॉब्लम ये हो गया कि घर पे मैं जो काम करता था वो कभी ऑफिस पे नहीं मिलता था, ऑफिस पे काम कर लिया तो फैक्ट्री जाओ तो नहीं मिलता था. तो ऐसे यार ये पूरा इंटरनेट तो क्लाउड पे चलता है, तो मेरी लाइफ हर जगह कंप्यूटर में क्यों स्प्लिट हो गई है. सो आई सेड देयर हैज टू बी अ बेटर वे टू डू दिस, एंड सो दैट वाज द की प्रॉब्लम दैट आई स्टार्टेड सॉल्विंग. आई सेड इसको ये पूरा मेरा लाइफ है, हाउ कैन आई टेक माय लाइफ वेयरएवर आई गो. एंड वन थिंग लेड टू अनदर, scratch my head, work with my friends, co-founder, and I said, iska bhi ek solution hai. And we actually built a platform sitting here in Ahmedabad. मेरे पास तो tech team भी नहीं थी. I had actually outsourced my initial development. I said ये idea इतना unique था, किसी ने करके नहीं दिखाया था. तो मैं कोई investor को भी मिलने जाऊँ या तो मैं team बनाने भी जाऊँ, तो first question was यार ये तो तू कह रहा है लेकिन ये ऐसा होगा कैसे. And so the first thing was to say यार ये मेरे दिमाग में आइडिया है, इसको एक रियलिटी में बदल के देखते हैं. अभी इसका नया नाम आ गया है, everybody says there is an MVP, minimum viable product. उस जमाने में we just simply called it ये हमारा डेमो है या तो हमारा प्रोटोटाइप. कि देखो ये जो आइडिया मेरे दिमाग में है ये एक्चुअली चल सकता है, and I can make this possible. So we built a platform where a person like me or anybody else could come on the platform and add the components of his online life onto one platform. And you have to understand, ये मैं 2000 के साल की बात कर रहा हूँ, तब ये सब fancy portals या web services या cloud integration कुछ नहीं था. Every service, whether it was Hotmail या Yahoo या Google, everybody worked in their specific silos. कोई एक दूसरे से बात नहीं कर रहा था, बात करनी भी नहीं थी, because they were all fighting for the same user. So when you come up with an idea that's so revolutionary, it is one very difficult for people to explain क्या यार ऐसी भी कोई जरूरत होती है. And two, because people struggle or rather voraciously fought for the fact that ये मेरा user मेरा है, आप किसी और के साथ काम कर ही कैसे सकते हो. And we were trying to neutralize the whole internet. Neutralize as in You could have an address book at Yahoo, use Hotmail for your email, and agar aapko email aati hai to Skype se alert aata. So we actually made it possible for your entire internet world to work with each other. So let me pause here. This was the problem. This was the solution. We found a prototype, we built a prototype, and then I headed off to the US to kind of, because tab India mein startup ka zamana chalu nahi hua tha. You know, VCs se leke, the market also wasn't big here. So I went where the market was. I went to the US. I said, ye idea to hai, but koi bhi idea sirf technology se solve nahi hota hai, right? At the end of the day, what is a startup? Yeah, so मैं ये कह रहा था कि apart from the technology risk, there are a lot of other risks as a business you need to kind of address. And one of the risks is that, is this business eventually going to make money? And eventually going to make money means that someone has to be willing to pay for what you're trying to offer. So what's up karne ke liye, I actually went to the market where I thought, you know, there was a market for my technology, and which was the US. And so I spent about 3 to 4 months in the US just trying to do due diligence on the market, on the product, you know, how do you build a team, what kind of people I will need. So when you're looking at building a business, it's not just about doing one thing. You have to think 360, right? Everything that affects your business and everything your business is going to affect, you need to learn and you need to kind of make yourself aware of all those different parameters or different modules or aspects of, you know, what your business is going to touch. So which is where I kind of went to the US, and that's where I discovered there was another company in the US which was doing the exact same thing. It was good. You know, one of the first things that comes to your mind is when you look at someone else doing the same thing, you're like, "Arey, ye to mere jaise to aur 2-3 log hain." And sometimes it's fear that because it's competition, you know, how will I come up ahead, and you know, what will I do, and how are they better, and all of those questions cross your mind. But one of the key things that also crossed my mind is that if there are, you know, 2 or 3 other people trying to do the same thing, which means there's a market for this. So competition in a way is reassuring, and competition also, you know, helps you always stay ahead in your game. Right? Of the 4 or 5 people I gradually discovered who were trying to do similar things in the US, one of them was funded $100 million over a period of time, of course, not when it started, but over a period of time. And that's the only company that still is around. There are 3 or 4 other companies who are doing similar things. All of them ran out of business at some point in time. We were also doing the same thing. I came back from the US, and obviously this was a tech company, very high risk. Whatever you know, money I needed to invest had a risk component to it. Also, apart from the risk component, the money I wanted also needed to come with the smarts. Right? I could have asked my dad saying, you know, ye dhanda chalu karna hai, aap mujhe thoda paisa de do capital ke hisab se, and I'll get off the ground. And so one of the things I also decided is ki ye mujhe karna hai. My dad already has a good business. He's already interested in running. And why should I ask him to, you know, deviate from that? And so I said, you know, if I have to do this, I will do it on my own. And I started scouting for, you know, venture funds and, you know, capital and investment and angel investment and whatnot. Fortunately, in a very short time of about 2 to 3 months, I was able to close my angel funding as well as my initial round of venture capital. And I got off the ground. And this is about 2001, right? And so 2001 say, you know, my company is kind of been up and running. We started investing the money, building the product. And I'm telling you the story, and the story is, you know, also having its aspects of my learning and what happened at what point in time and how, you know, what we had to do to adapt and stay current. So, you know, we got the funding, I built a team, we started building the product, you know, almost about 2003, it took me 2 years to completely build a product which was sellable, right? You could do a prototype, but then a product is not, I mean, a prototype is not something you sell. When you have a technology solution, you pretty much are solving the technology part of it. But when you go to the market, there are a lot of aspects to a product, right? And again, good learning. I went and sold the product to one of the largest internet service providers in Malaysia. And I was fortunate to go and meet the CEO of that company when we signed the contract. And he looked at the contract, he was flipping through the pages, and one of the pages was the SLA, you know, service level agreement. कि अगर कुछ होगा तो आप कितने घंटों में कैसे प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करोगे, एस्केलेशन क्या है, दिस दैट. None of this I had a clue, but when we built the agreement, I learned all of that. And as I was learning all of that, I obviously had to put in the infrastructure at the back end to be able to kind of make sure that we are able to, honor these terms. And one of the key questions he asked me is कि यहाँ एक लिखा है support@netphonets.com. तो ये अभी इसको मैं email भेजूँ तो क्या होगा? And honestly, I didn't have the answer for that. We had a support email address, and it was going to be addressed by someone, but I didn't have an answer to his question in terms of what is the process we were going to follow. So again, this was another key point, another key learning, right? There is a product, but the product has to be backed by so many things. It has to be backed by the right sales material. It has to be backed by the right, people. It has to be backed by the right processes. It has to be backed by the right kind of support. And most important, it has to be backed by the right kind of roadmap. Because in technology, what is current today does not stay current tomorrow. So even today, when we work with clients, one of the key things is, we ask these questions to our clients saying, yes, as to, this is what you want to get done today. But while we are architecting the product, where do you see, this particular solution 2 years down the road, or 1 year down the road, or 6 months down the road? Because we cannot rebuild this product every 6 months, right? So when you build a product, you need to have a roadmap. You need to know where you're going with this. And all of these, again, I didn't have all these answers to begin with, but now in hindsight, I can recollect all of this and put it in a way that it helps other entrepreneurs to kind of think through their journey as they start off and as they start building, companies and products. So let me pause here for a bit. Now, in all of this, you might be asking, coming from a manufacturing background I don't have an engineering degree, neither a software engineering degree or any other engineering degree, right? Technology has just been my passion. I have been coding since the age of 15. And anything I did in life, had to have a technology angle. And sure enough, 20 years down the road, I'm still running a technology company. And but the very important thing in this whole journey was when I worked with a business, a family business, which has been in business for 50, 60 years, right? And there you sort of get used to the fact that, you don't need people. People need you. And, stepping out to the market where I was a complete nobody in the IT field. I mean, honestly, when I started in 1999, when I started having the initial ideas, I had no clue what IP meant. I mean, for me, IP was Internet Protocol. I didn't know what intellectual property was. I didn't know what VC meant. And so when someone explained there is venture capital, I said, aisa bhi hota hai. People without collateral will give you money and they don't ask for it back. And so these are all learnings. I didn't know what an advisory board was. I didn't know what how do you, what is sweat equity? And how I got to know all these terms in those 3 or 4 months that I was doing my due diligence. I was interacting with a whole bunch of people in this industry. And thanks to platform like TIE, which made it possible, both for people like me who were at the receiving end in those days, to people like, Narayan Murthy and Sam Pitroda, who were at the other end, who had already accomplished a lot, who had the right know-how, who had done things, who had learned, who had made mistakes. And the best part was, through a platform like TIE, these are people who are willing to openly share and openly help. And help meant whether it was mentoring, whether it was advising, whether it was funding, they were there. They were, these were ears that were willing to listen and lend out a helping hand. And so for me, TIE was an indispensable tool in my journey all through. And when it came to the right time, so TIE is a global body, right? It has chapters across, some 20 different countries, 60 different cities. And when it, at the right time, when I had the opportunity, I said, we have to bring TIE to Ahmedabad. And so I was one of the founding members for TIE Ahmedabad, along with 7 or 8 different people, and who all felt very strongly that TIE should be here. And I have been part of TIE since 20 years again. As long as I have been in business, I have been part of TIE, sometimes at the receiving end, sometimes at the giving end. And, I have also fortunately been part of their global IT committee, trying to help TIE globally in terms of their platforms. So it's a fantastic organization, and I can't, thank TIE enough And every entrepreneur who's here, who's listening, I would strongly recommend, get on board with TiE. I mean, this is in your journey. This is an indispensable tool. The best part is TiE is a not-for-profit organization. Nobody in TiE has any expectations from contributing in TiE. We just want to, we have a very simple mission of TiE. It's called fostering entrepreneurship. We'll do anything to help entrepreneurs. And the fact that it's global, sitting here in Ahmedabad, sitting here in Mumbai, wherever you are, you can reach out to entrepreneurs across the globe. You can reach out to the TiE platform across the globe. And then, so TiE has kind of been a constant in all my, in my journey so far. So I don't know, Hiranmay, did you have any questions or should I just keep going?
You keep going, we'll pull the question ladder.
Okay, fine. So now let me come, more towards this whole, the topic of today, right? Think local, act global. Everybody's been having different theories about globalization, localization. The newest word is now Atmanirbhar. But I think I am an advocate of best of both worlds, right? And so I like to look at Net4Nuts, my journey, in 3 different phases. Right? The first phase was when I had the initial idea, build the initial product or the platform, and when we are looking at that platform, like I said, I went abroad because my market was there. I saw companies that had already raised tons of funding who were trying to address similar things. But I had a fundamental thought that, if I want to do something, I will do it back from India. And so when it came to actually forming the company, building the team, raising capital, I actually built a company in India, even though I was selling to markets abroad. And the idea was, in those days, when you talk about an idea which was so revolutionary, which people had not thought of, and which people even didn't think that there would be something like this possible. They would look at a product, they would look at this whole thing, and I have faced this question so many times. At the end of that whole conversation, the last question would be, "Oh, where are you guys based?" And I'd say Ahmedabad. And obvious question was, "Yaar, Ahmedabad? तो IT hub तो है नहीं, तो अहमदाबाद में क्यों शुरू किया कंपनी?" एंड मेरा जवाब उनको सामने एक क्वेश्चन ही होता था कि अगर अहमदाबाद वाला अहमदाबाद में कंपनी शुरू नहीं करेगा तो नारायण मूर्ति थोड़ा आके अहमदाबाद में कंपनी शुरू करने वाला है. एंड सो दैट वाज वन ऑफ द की थिंग्स वेयर आई सेड, जहां भी wherever there is a will there is a way. And my will was that I needed to build this product company out of Ahmedabad. And I said, I am willing to do a lot of things. I will probably work double the time. I will work probably 5 times harder, in which I had to get the right kind of people to come to Ahmedabad and work for Net4Nuts. And but that was the determination I had. Okay, I'm a product company. I don't need 500 people, right? If I needed 500 people in those days, then I needed to be in Bangalore or Hyderabad or Delhi or wherever. But if I needed 20 good people to build a great product company, I'm sure Ahmedabad could supply that. And again, see, innovation is not just in product. Innovation, when you have a mission like this, I said, "Nahi, company to yahi se banani hai. Log kahan se laye?" So I said, let's go to the source. I went to the likes of LD Engineering, Rollwala, जहां के सीनियर लोगों से मेरी कुछ भी पहचान हो गई थी. I went and asked them कि यार आप तो पिछले 10 साल से MCA या बैचलर्स इन कंप्यूटर इंजीनियरिंग की डिग्रीज दे रहे हो, पिछले 2-3 साल में से tell me 2-3 students that you have really stood out, और जिसके नाम आपको मालूम है, जिसके कांटेक्ट आपके पास है, तो I would want to reach out. तो ऐसे करते करते I used innovative sources to kind of, and so these professors, these deans who were at these universities actually gave me a few names which were a good start for me. And people who are good, if they don't find the right opportunity in Ahmedabad, obviously they're going to move out. So none of these guys that I got the names for were in Ahmedabad. कोई पुणे काम कर रहा था, कोई मुंबई काम कर रहा था, कोई US काम कर रहा था. And somehow or the other I reached out to a few of them, and I got the first 2-3 people to come and join Net4Nuts. In fact, the interesting story I always like to tell people is, एक बंदा तो ऐसा था जो H1 वीजा में US में काम कर रहा था, for a very large IT company. उसकी माँ अहमदाबाद में रह रही थी, वो आया मुंबई काम से और मेरी इंटरव्यू उसकी मुंबई में हो गई, and he decided to forgo his return journey and join Netflix. That is the pitch I made to him, saying, boss, you can continue working for a large IT company and do your services and do your low cost labor and whatnot, and here I have an idea which will help us change the world. So उसमें भी innovation चाहिए, उसमें भी एक pitch चाहिए, and वो भी मैंने धीरे again ये सीखना पड़ता है. छोटी company, even though I was funded, I had 4 crores of venture capital funding in those days. Even though I was funded, people had a question mark. यार ये लोग तो 2000 लोगों की कंपनी में काम कर रहे हैं, 20,000 लोगों की कंपनी में काम कर रहे हैं, ये इसके पास तो 5 लोग भी नहीं है, तो यहाँ मिलेगा क्या, ये सैलरी भी कर पाएगा कि नहीं टाइम पे. So a lot of different challenges you have to go through as an entrepreneur, right? And again, if there is no problem, there is no solution. If there is no solution, there is no thrill. So ये सब करने में भी बहुत मजा आया. Coming back to the product, local Ahmedabad. So ये product तो, see, the vision was very global, because those 4 months that I spent abroad helped me understand what my clients are looking for, what my customer would look for when they buy a technology, when they write the check, what is the expectation. And so that global vision is how I shaped my product. You could build software, you could make things work, but when you want to sell a solution, it, like I said earlier, it comes with a lot of other components, and which is basically where I got that whole global feedback to shape this local product. So sure enough, 2 years, we worked, we built a great product. There was a huge event in Delhi called India Internet World, which is where we decided that we will go and announce to the world that we have now a product that does so and so, and we are now ready for the market to go out and start selling this. Sure enough, life had very different plans. 911 happened just 10 days before this local event. And part of the fallout of 911 was, by that time, the .com bubble had already kind of reached its peak, and people are anyways complaining, saying, now this is too much, it's at a different level and this bubble has to burst. And this 911, one of the fallouts it had was the whole IT industry going through a really tough time, 2003 onwards. So the 911 happened just a few days before our event. And one of the key questions we were also trying to answer is that, is this the right time to go to the industry, to our customers with a new product? But we decided to kind of stay on course. And we struggled really hard. All the big clients, all the big customers that we'd already pitched to, we said we are coming with a product, this is what we'll make possible for you. All of these guys gradually, because, like today, if you look at the COVID world, everybody's very conservative in terms of making new investments, taking new bets, or saying, right now, my focus, my priority is survival. I don't want to kind of be investing or spending money on long-term initiatives. So the whole product that we had built after investing all our venture capital money and, doing all this effort, in about 6 or 8 months, we realized this is not going to sell. We were selling $500,000 licenses as a platform, as a solution. That is what we were trying to go out and sell. It was a huge piece of software that made amazing things happen, but people were not willing to pay for it. And so in all this travel, while all this was happening, I was traveling across the globe, trying to sell to different clients, different customers. And in this whole process, I was also looking at what and how, countries outside of India were evolving when it comes to consumption of technology. And one of the key things we noticed was, outside of India, and mobile was very new in India those days, but outside of India, mobile was a big story. It had already started becoming a big story. And Malaysia, Philippines was actually the biggest consumption story when it came to messaging. And so we said, yeah, internet mein to kuch bikega nahi. This platform that we have is not going to go out and sell, at $500,000 a piece or whoever. Nobody has the checkbook, nobody has the business model. So instead of saying, "Acha, ye nahi chalne wala, band kar dete hain," we said, "Okay, what can we do?" Because we knew the internet so well. We knew how email services work. We knew how news services work, travel work, foreign exchange. We had a gamut of things that we were trying to do as part of our platform. But obviously, this is not a solution that will work on anything else but a very powerful PC or a server. Fortunately, one of the key things that, again, coming from those 4 months of, due diligence, one of the things I had learned even then is that the whole technology world is going to evolve far beyond just the PC and the browser. And, people in those days were already talking about IoT and, mobile devices. And those days, there was no mobile devices which were as powerful as today, but they had PDAs. I don't know if you know Palm and, a lot of those other technologies, which are mini computers that could fit in your hand. So there was also this opportunity saying, if you are building a technology product today, it should also work across multiple different devices and form factors. And so part of that, part of the architecture we had designed was also the fact that, hey, if you don't have a PC, how does someone use the product Net4Nuts had built? And so, which is sure enough, that was the one aspect of our solution that we, in a span of just 2 months, we were able to rework the entire product, entire solution, and break it down into pieces. Hey, you want to know what's playing on HBO right now? Send TV space HBO on an SMS, and we will send you information back. You want to know if your train ticket is confirmed? Send PNR space the number and send it back to us. And we will look up the railways website and send it back. So what we realized in this whole global traveling and discussions and, listening to people was the aspect of two very powerful phenomena shaping our life. One was the internet, what's on the cloud, and the other was your mobile phone. These two extremely powerful phenomena didn't talk to each other. And we already had a platform which knew the internet, which was able to neutralize and integrate all the internet services onto a common platform. And we didn't know the mobile. So all we had to do is create a plug saying, hey, this is the platform, this is our middleware. And can we look at building a plug so that these services can be consumed on a mobile phone? And part of that architecture I was telling you about helped us because the architecture was designed in such a way that it could work, it could take service requests from almost any other device, and mobile just happened to be one of the devices. So that's when, we reshaped our business model. In fact, this was a time when we went to our VCs. Obviously, by that time, neither me nor the VCs were very convinced that this company had a future. And when we reshaped this whole business, I actually asked my advisory board, my investors, saying, hey, I know we've come to this point, but now, it's very difficult to take future bets. But now if you give me 6 months, this is what I want to achieve. This is the capital we can commit. I already had some reserves in the company by then. And so we said on a 6 to 6 month plan, we started reshaping our business. We started going to a different set of customers. From selling $500,000 licenses, we had changed our business model to be selling 50 paise SMSs. So you can imagine the shift. From $500,000 licenses, I was now selling 50 paise SMSs. My first invoice with this new business model was all of 7,000 rupees. So you can imagine, after having invested almost 2.5 crore rupees, I raised an invoice of 7,000 rupees, on this new business model. And I just wasn't sure, where will this get me? How am I ever going to recover, if at all I'm going to recover the capital? Sure enough, I think the mobile story. So now this is the second phase of my globalization approach. The mobile story took a completely different shift. I was selling, we already had customers outside of India. Thailand, all of Thailand had about 12 million users. All of Singapore in those days had about 4 or 5 million users. Malaysia was a big market, 20 million. Philippines was even bigger. And then India started consuming mobile value-added services. And it so happened that, 80% of my business, which was outside of the country, gradually over just a short span of 2 years, 80% of the volume, the transactions were coming out of India. And gradually we started focusing more and more on the Indian customer, more on their needs, more and more on what solutions and what services people here in India were willing to pay for. Surprisingly, we had people in India, even though the SMSs were priced at 2 or 3 rupees an SMS, people were still consuming, because in those days, India didn't have the kind of internet connectivity everybody wanted. So those days, people had to go to cyber cafes to be able to check emails. If you online transactions weren't that many, but then computers at home weren't popular, mobile devices weren't popular in terms of the 4G speeds that you have today. So the consumption on SMS was phenomenal. My next 10 years of my journey, I had a global product and I was selling local. 10 years, all the way till about 2011, my company's growth story was all about selling 50 paise SMSs, but we had a phenomenal 3D growth model. The number of services we are offering, right? So we started with email, then added railways, then we added, entertainment services, games, cricket, whatnot. So number of services we were adding kept on growing. The number of people consuming mobile services kept on growing. So I have actually gone to the 1 million user India celebration for Vodafone and Idea. Today, each of these cellular companies in India are like 400 million each. So I was part of that growth story too. And third, the consumption of mobile value-added services, people found it convenient, as people found it, hey, I could be standing at a bus stand and, getting an alert that, hey, my Naukri resume got accepted. If they got an alert, they were willing to pay 20 rupees for that subscription service. So because of the whole India need, the local need was so strong, our global product started, servicing this local market. Okay. So that's the complete reverse of saying we went with a local product globally, and then we came from a global product and selling locally. The interesting thing is, in 2000, I think 10, 11, iPhones and the Androids of the world came out, and everything. So this was like the one thing that we thrived on, right? The internet and mobile didn't talk to each other. And now you had this smart device with a 3G and a 4G connectivity that was capable of doing everything we were trying to do, or rather we were already doing, and people were willing to pay for it. So come this shift, and we saw that, hey, now there is a railways app on a phone. Now there is a cricket app on the phone. Now there is obviously email was built into the mobile phone. I said, so everything that we are making money from, this device is doing it inherently. So how do we make money now? And so sure enough, the minute we realized that there is no money to be made here, the first step we took was we stopped investing in adding more products. We stopped investing in saying, hey, now we'll take a bet on the next big thing, because we realized that this whole device becoming so powerful had a lot more implications on this whole value chain. So if you actually looked at the mobile industry before the smartphones came across, there was this mobile operator, the Airtels, Vodafones, Ideas of the world, who had built this entire massive network. They owned the user. Everything that they did on the network, including value-added services and those SMSs of 3 rupees that you paid for, everything was controlled by them. So for a 3 rupee SMS, if I'm getting 50 paise, it was something they dictated, saying, hey, for this service, if I make 3 rupees, then this is the max I can afford to give you. So they, we had a interesting joke. We used to go around just joking with other people who were in the industry, who were suffering like me, saying, what's the difference between a god and a mobile operator? And the answer was that the god doesn't think he's a mobile operator. So that is how powerful these mobile operators were then. And come the smartphone and the 3G connectivity, and if you look at these last 8-10 years, there's a huge shift. The entire value of what you do on the mobile phone has now gone down to the operating system. So the guys who own the iOS and the guys who own the Android, they pretty much control everything. The App Store is the one that is making money, not the mobile operator, because you're paying the App Store directly. It's the phone that's doing all the work. So that's why, people who manufacture the phones are making money. So if you actually look at it, the whole mobile industry today, the operators, the guys who set up this massive network are pretty much just servicing, communication traffic, whether it's data, voice, or SMS. And all the value has shifted somewhere else. And part of this, my business, our revenues pretty much nosedived. About 2010, 11, next 2-3 years, our whole business was done with. And so come the third phase and the final phase of what we are doing today is we again had a very tough decision to make. By that time, our revenues were gone. Our business model did work. Our product was no longer relevant. And we said, okay, now what do we do? So one option was again to close the company. The other option was, hey, let's pivot. Can we do something else? Do we want to invest in another product? 10, 12 years down the road, I didn't have an idea. I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a need that I felt so strongly about, saying, yes, I'm willing to bet my next 2-3 years on this one need and one solution. So after scratching my head for a long time, I didn't come up with any ideas or products or problems that I could solve. So one option was that, okay, at this point in time, let's give up. If I have the idea, I can start another company and do something else. At the same time, we also realized that part of this 10, 11 years long journey, one of the key things we had learned was to build, solutions that were able to function 24/7. Most of our SLAs with operators had a 99.95% uptime guarantees, which means that in a quarter, in 3 months, I was allowed, some less than a day's worth of downtime. So obviously we made solutions that just work no matter what. They were able to self-detect problems. They were able to alert us. They were able to, certain times, fail over. There was massive amount of learning in terms of just the sheer architectures we built. So we realized we have high availability architecture experience. We also have, mission critical solution deployment. So ours weren't flimsy softwares that, if they didn't work, it was okay, right? Because the whole essence of being in a revenue share relationship with the operator was that if he didn't make revenue from my solution, I wasn't making money. So it was in my interest to make sure that the solutions kept on functioning and we kept on delivering value. And so sure enough, that's something we realized, saying, hey, this is the expertise. Let's go to some of the people I already know who had by then already started product companies, who, were already doing different things. So it was their product, their idea, their problems that they were solving, but they actually needed tech expertise. So building a piece of software or writing code is very different than building a software product. And what we realize is that these 10, 12 years of experience of running mobile solutions, building mobile softwares and solutions, we had that expertise to kind of, learn how software products get built. What is the life cycle? What is the development methodology that you need to stick to? And that is what we package, saying, hey, you have a product and you need some, additional development done, or you have an idea and you need the entire product developed ground up. Here's where Net4Nuts can help. This is my team, from the architecture, the software architect, all the way to the QA guy. These are experienced people who have, experience with mission critical solutions, high availability architectures, the entire product life cycle, and we'll build the product for you. So about 2-3 years of struggle, and and the whole idea was that we were offering product engineering as a service now. So from a whole product company, we became a services company. And so today, what Net4Nuts does is actually build products for other companies. We have serviced some of the largest clients building their softwares in the semiconductor space, in the healthcare space, in the logistics space, in the fintech space. So wherever you need high availability architectures, wherever you need mission critical solutions, that's basically where Net4Nuts is now getting a lot of business in terms of outsourced product development. With that, I'm going to bring my discussion to a close so that we have some time for Q&A. And I'm open for questions, Hiranbhai, and whatever else I can address during the rest of the time we have.
Wonderful, great story, Chirag bhai. जो आपने कहा कि innovation का पूरा complete journey जो आपने cover किया, coming all the way from Ahmedabad, went to Silicon Valley, raised venture capital fund in 2000. I mean, those days used to be the LKG and UKG of venture capital industries, and now it has been a buzzword. Now a lot of people know that this industry is a sexy industry, but then ultimately those are the days when pathfinders like you used to travel, right? So definitely you have done a commendable job. So a couple of questions which I will read out to you. Shreya Arora is asking, what methods venture capitalists and investors use to evaluate Indian startups? And in your opinion, which method of valuation is best according to they're appropriate any kind of startups. I mean, this is a God's formula, but I mean, yeah. Really.
So my simple option or answer to this is there is no science to this. I think you need the venture capital as much as the venture capital needs you. Let's be very clear. He has money. His biggest problem is that he needs to multiply it. And without the right entrepreneur, he cannot multiply his money. And you have, as an entrepreneur, have the right story, the right product, the right business. But you cannot thrive or you cannot, grow your business without the capital, right? So I think this is a equation that has to find its equilibrium. That's the way I look at it. It's not science. And like anything else, I think who needs whom, how much will determine your negotiation. Yes, so there are valuation models and, you'll predict revenues. But honestly, you show me one business plan that has kind of worked from, how it was written on paper and how it was executed. Things change. Look at my story, right? I have changed 3 business models. And my valuation, if I told you what valuation I got in 2000 and, for selling $500,000 licenses, you can understand the valuation I was looking for. And then when my business model changed to 50 paise, you think the same business model was valid? No. So I think all investors understand that, they bet on the entrepreneur. They bet on the ability for the entrepreneur and the venture to adapt and continue delivering value. And that's basically where you as an entrepreneur need to negotiate, or you as an entrepreneur need to be very realistic. Let's not put negotiation in this. Be very realistic in terms of, you don't have a multi-million-dollar idea today. Yes, it has the potential, but then you also need to give the investor the ability to make money. Like I said, his problem is to multiply. So if you, for whatever idea that you have today, whatever company stage that you are at today, for a X percentage of, your company, you also have to ensure that when your top line reaches a certain level, has this investment grown 3 times, 5 times, 10 times? Because that's the only way the investor will be interested in investing in your company. So look at it objectively, because the investor with his money has the option of going to the stock market, investing in a very liquid company, let's say Reliance or Bajaj Finance or HDFC Bank, and get an exit whenever he wants. So if he is happy with a 15% ROI, he will go somewhere else. He wants a 200% ROI. He wants a 300% ROI. You as an entrepreneur need to be able to convince him that your company has the ability to give you that multiple.
Wonderful. ये बहुत सही बात आपने कहा कि पैसा देने वालों को उतना ही जरूरत है जितना पैसा लेने वालों को है.
But I think the Indian mindset is such that paisa rules. But I have always maintained that, मुझे पैसे की जरूरत है, but it's not like there is only one investor in the market, right? So I think it's a mutual problem, and that equation is not important just for raising the capital. It's also very important to continue working with your investors, because both of us, will come together, do this. At the end of the day, our motives are very different. There will be a constant flight, but I think, as long as you are able to kind of step back from the fight and objectively decide that, yes, what is right for my company is very important.
Wonderful. And that's what many of the participants are complimenting you with your new thought that, like Praful Varadia sir from LM College is saying, investors bet on ability of the entrepreneur to make money is a new formula that you gave, which will be very eternal for entrepreneurs, the new age entrepreneurs to look at. एक सवाल आ रहा है कि आत्मनिर्भर भारत की सिचुएशन में एंटरप्रेन्योर्स की भूमिका क्या होगा, क्या रोल होगा लोकल एंटरप्रेन्योर्स का?
So मेरी स्टोरी सुन के तो आप समझ ही गए होंगे कि any time there is a problem, there is an opportunity, right? I started, thinking about IT when Y2K was about to happen. So 1998, 1999, the world woke up to the Y2K problem. That gave birth to this entire IT industry of India, right? 911 happened. That gave a very different, so for me it was a big problem, right? मेरी company बंद होने वाली थी, and I was able to kind of convert that into a different kind of an opportunity because of the problem, because of the fact that my current business didn't work. I had to go back and look at something else. iPhone and Android, I give you the same example. I've shifted my gears to doing something totally different, and every time there's an opportunity, there is, every time there's a problem, there's an opportunity. I don't know from a technology point of view, because that's the only language I understand and I can kind of think through. I'm still struggling in terms of where all you will have opportunities in COVID. But just the sheer dependency of life in terms of, with social distancing and continuing this way of life, there is going to be a lot of dependency on technology. And how and where do you find these problems? I will give you a simple example, right? Today, I don't know how many of you are aware, but Reliance Industries is going through one of the largest fundraising exercises in India, a rights issue, something that doesn't happen without paper. You have to have a large form, you have to fill out, you have to write a check. Earlier the whole method was very different. And today I started reading on it because that whole issue opened yesterday, and my father came to me, he's 75 plus, and he says, हमारे पास इतना share holding है, अभी इसका क्या करेंगे? Form print करके ले आओ. And then I was trying to read, this is not my topic, but I was trying to read as to how do you apply online. Some of the so there is an online process, but then that online process also has exceptions. There are minors who cannot apply online. There are my dad doesn't have an online account, he cannot apply online. So I was trying to figure out how do you kind of work around that problem. And so things like this, every problem that will come up, you will have to put your mind to it, saying how do I ensure with the same level of stability that a signed form physically, how do I make sure that again a problem statement, how do I make sure that a 75-year-old can, through his phone or through a voice call, submit this application? I don't have the answer, but I'm just saying that every time you think COVID, every time you think what is changing, you will also have to start thinking, if there is this change, what are some solutions? What are some methods I can apply to kind of solve these problems?
Wonderful. Dr. Pradeep Desai is asking, in your opinion, entrepreneurs are born or they can be trained?
Well, I'm a firm believer entrepreneurs are born.
Okay.
Because there's fire in the belly, right? The ability to digest this risk, coming home and being okay with the fact that when you have 10 problems on your head, you are still able to sleep. I have personally been in situations where I didn't know how I was going to make my next payroll for the company. All of these things, you can't teach. And my wife is an academician, and she's equally, or rather she's more qualified. She's a PhD and whatnot. And she and I have this constant thing. She's like, no, I'm very secure with having an office to go to, having a paycheck that comes to me, not worrying about how I'm going to manage 50 people and their lives and their livelihoods. I'm very okay, doing what I need to do. And she actually started a consulting practice a few years back, in fact, before I started Netphoneuts. And she said, this is just too much for me to digest. I'm going back to my, salaried job. So 100% they are born.
Wonderful. Mr. Ajit is asking, and probably I will take the question. He's asking our students who want to become entrepreneur are afraid of stringent rules and regulation and documentation for entrepreneurs and all, and how government is helping. देखिए, पहली बात तो है ना, आज की तारीख में काफी सारी चीजें ईज ऑफ ऑपरेशंस हो गया है, और जब तक आपके प्रोडक्ट नहीं बन जाता, जब तक आप मिनिमम वायबल प्रोटोटाइप नहीं बना लेते हो, तब तक कोई रेगुलेशन ही नहीं है. आज की तारीख में स्टेट गवर्नमेंट से हम लोग फंडिंग करते हैं, स्टार्टअप इंडिया की बहुत सारे स्कीम्स हैं, इसके अलावा लोकल एंजल इन्वेस्टर्स भी काफी हैं. तो प्रोडक्ट बनाने तक तो रेगुलेटरी इशू नहीं है. हाँ, अगर आप हेल्थ केयर सेक्टर में हैं, मेडिकल सेक्टर में हैं, तो आपको कुछ सर्टिफिकेशन की जरूरत है. Otherwise, if you are in the journey of building a product, I don't think so there is a technical issue into it. But once you make this thing, go to funding parts and all these things, then certain contract regulations, all other things will come. But tell your student, don't be afraid. पहली बात तो कि दिल छोटा नहीं करना है, और ये जो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप का जर्नी है ना, ये सेफर बेट वालों के लिए नहीं है. क्योंकि अगर आप ये सोचते हैं कि भाई मेरा रिस्क फैक्टर को ऑप्टिमाइज कैसे करना है, तो प्रोबेबली वो लोग को थोड़ी सी दिक्कत होगी इन चीजों पे. लेकिन जहां तक हम लोग स्टूडेंट्स को इंटरेक्ट करते हैं, एट दैट एज ऑफ 21 to 25, इवन इफ दे फेल, इट्स एन इन्वेस्टमेंट. अगर वो फेल भी होते हैं तो उनके लिए काफी लर्निंग वाला गेम रहता है, एंड दैट शुड बी अप्रिशिएटेड. तो बच्चों को डराइए मत, बच्चों को पॉजिटिव एग्जांपल दिलाइए कि लोग किस तरीके से सक्सेसफुल एग्जांपल्स क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, और हर जिले में, हर तालुका में लोग हैं जिन्होंने स्ट्रगल के बाद भी सक्सेसफुल मॉडल बनाए हैं. आई थिंक वी नीड टू फोकस ऑन building good successful examples which will take it to next stage. So one question which has come from Dr. Harshal Shah, he says that the story is fantastic. You rightly told that there is nothing called only localization, only globalization. You need best of two. probably you have advantage of understanding the local problems more, but then also think how you can sell globally. But what he says is there a technology bias? Which are the technology, like you anticipated cloud and others really well before time had came in the market? The technology that you anticipated can really transform telecom and others. तो आज की तारीख में जो लोग सोच रहे हैं फ्यूचर की कौन से टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रैक्स हैं, जैसे कि और एक किसी ने सवाल पूछा था कि इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल कैसा रहेगा, किसी ने कहा आईओटी कैसा रहेगा. सो डू यू थिंक देयर इज अ टेक्नोलॉजी बायस व्हिच कैन बी फिगर्ड इन द coming at least couple of years?
So I don't know what you mean by technology bias, but if you are saying that technology, so again my understanding could be different, but if you are saying that technology is better available in the US versus in India, wo to abhi raha nahi hai, right? Anything and everything that is being published on the internet, it's up to you what you make out of it, right? So
what is meaning by technology bias is, if you look to, there is a phobia in market. Many often 5 years before, if anybody is an enterprise tech or marketplace or something like the mini version of Flipkart in Ahmedabad, people used to sell at us, put money. So e-commerce was at boom. At some point of time, people figure out IoT, embedded devices, they come in the boom. So probably many often the investors also get seduced to attracted to certain sectors.
Correct.
Sectors का larger implications है क्या?
So I think ये सब in my experience ये herd mentality चलती नहीं है unless you personally see. I also have this formula about what has made me or other businesses very successful. Even if it is Paytm, I don't know how many of you know, but it was a company called it still is a company called 197, which was actually doing MVAS, the same services we were doing, right? But when they look at the payment, see, they were on the side of the mobile where they were also looking at transactions and payments. So from that, it led to a fact that अच्छा चलो इसमें तो इतना सारा volume है that we'll keep focusing on payments. And we said यार mobile से तो कौन payment करेगा, and people would have turned away from that idea. So I think this is all about again the right problem, having the passion and the understanding to find the right solution. I don't think there is a technology bias. And in fact, if you say that acha if the VCs are funding e-commerce, so let me also do another e-commerce venture, you are failing to understand that if the story has become so big that it has come to you, there is enough that's already been done there, right? So you are already waking up late. So you start with your story. As long as genuinely you have a problem that you can solve, and your market due diligence, your customers, your talking to potential customers is giving you the fact and the comfort that yes, this is something people are willing to pay for. That's what you should pursue.
Okay. एक सवाल है चिराग सर, ललित चोपड़ा हिम्मतनगर से पूछ रहे हैं, कोई अच्छे किताब जो आपको इंस्पायर किए होंगे उनकी बच्चों के लिए रिकमेंडेशंस एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में?
Wow, from Himmatnagar.
हाँ.
So in this whole story, I didn't tell you that my 60-year-old business actually is in Himmatnagar.
Oh, your business is in Himmatnagar. Okay.
My family business is from Himmatnagar. So I spend a lot of time in Himmatnagar, Lalit. Lovely place. Now, unfortunately, I don't get time to come and visit. But my childhood and a lot of my business learning was actually spent working in Himmatnagar. But yeah, sorry, what was the question? I got lost.
Good books on entrepreneurship to inspire students.
So I think two ones that I would remember are Good to Great, and the other I constantly keep hearing, and people swear by it, is Crossing the Chasm. But the Crossing the Chasm is more after you've there's 3 or 4 stages of business, like you start up, then you survive, then you sustain. The scale part is basically where Crossing the Chasm makes a very big difference.
Okay, wonderful. एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग डिबेट है चार्ट वर्क्स में. आपने कहा एंटरप्रेन्योर्स ज्यादातर बर्न होते हैं, तो किसी ने लिखा कि आपकी जो फील्ड एक्सपीरियंस का जो लर्निंग है, आपने जो कहा, आपने जो सुने, आपने जो देखे, तो कहीं ना कहीं इसका भी तो बहुत बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन होगा आपके एंटरप्रेन्योरल स्ट्रेटेजी के लिए. तो क्या वो एक्सपीरियंसेस आफ्टर जो इंसान आपने कहा कि बाय बर्थ लेके आता है एक एटीट्यूड, तो क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस काम नहीं आते, क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस मायने नहीं रखते?
No, absolutely. Experience के बिना तो कुछ बन ही नहीं सकते ना. I am not definitely undermining the fact that मैंने आपको तो बताया, right? I come from a manufacturing background, and IT में आगे पहुंचना, आगे कुछ करना is all from experience. I have made tons of mistakes. We don't talk about it. We can have a separate session on just my failures. Uska bhi maine document banaya. And I gave a talk on just, learning from failures. That's very important. But so that's how, entrepreneur's journey is shaped. But my point is, when I say that entrepreneurs are born, it is not that you are born with the knowledge. You are born with the attitude. And entrepreneurship is all about having that commitment, the perseverance, the passion to kind of say, and I'm not saying that you be stupid about it, that you don't give up. But it's a whole, it's a formula that constantly keeps going in your head. At what time, why do you feel so passionate? Right? Mera paas itna bada business tha. Why did I decide that I am going to let go of a comfortable, top management chair and start doing this? Because you feel so passionate about this. Because your opportunity was so convincing that, well, I can do something here which, I regret if I didn't want to do it. So it's Wonderful. The attitude. It's the attitude that shapes the entrepreneur. The experiences though everybody has to have. Even if you're, working for someone, the experience will, figure out or make you what you are. Your deliveries will depend on your experiences. So experiences definitely I'm not undermining, but that's a given.
So Ashok Thumar is telling your story is also a book kind of thing. There might be many stories. So such things can be converted into books. So Piali is listening to me in this talk. I should take a responsibility of also creating a book of inspiring entrepreneurs from देसी entrepreneur है ना जो लोकल हीरोज हैं उनकी भी कहानियों की कहीं ना कहीं ऑडियो बुक वीडियो बुक टेक्सचुअल बुक व्हाटएवर ये बनाना चाहिए. तो उनका अशोक जी ये कह रहे हैं कि ये इंस्पायरिंग स्टोरीज को लिखना चाहिए, इनको कहीं ना कहीं किताबों में लेना चाहिए ताकि इससे लर्निंग मिलेगा एंड दिस विल रियली बी हेल्पफुल. एक सवाल इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल है
just one thing I want to add to this. Yeah. One of the key things at TiE, what I have always focused on is to showcase a lot of local entrepreneurs, right? People who have made successes here in Ahmedabad, in Gujarat. And why is that important? Is because the fact that, see, when you look at a Narayan Murthy or Ratan Tata, and you will say, boss, he can do it. He's a great entrepreneur. Or Mukesh Ambani, right? He's at a different level when you look at entrepreneurship. But when you actually, present, some of your SSIP startups, some of the companies that are in manufacturing, in pharma, that have actually made huge global successes out of nowhere. When they are local, when I know this person, this is the person I've gone to school with, I know him from the club or whatever, it gives me a lot of assurance that if this guy sitting here can do it, so can I. How am I any different than him? So I think it's very important to showcase local entrepreneurs to, budding entrepreneurs, because one, I think they can relate to them better, and two, they're live examples of something that's possible given all the constraints in the environment that you operate in is the same environment he came out of. So I think that's very assuring to kind of look up to.
Pranab Kumar is asking, he's an aspiring entrepreneur. He's saying, what should be the approach to scrutinize the system before going global? And what are the factors to keep in mind?
Homework. Due diligence, there is no escape from it. And the more you know about your market, the more you know about your clients, your customers, the better off you're going to be. Take a very, very informed decision. The more time you will spend, before you take your first step, the lesser are the chances that you will, make mistakes as you go along. So whether it is fundraising, whether it is going to a client, whether it is defining a product, I am a big believer to ask as many questions as possible to as many people as possible. I, don't shy of probably being perceived as an idiot with my questions, saying, "Ye aisa kaise pooch sakta hai?" But there is the only dumb questions are the ones that you don't ask. Is my philosophy. I'm a perpetual learner, and I think everybody has something to teach you, and especially when you are betting your time and your money after something. I think the more homework you will do, the more questions you'll ask, the more research you will do, the better off you're going to be.
Mr. Gohil is asking, कंपनी बड़ा होता है तो सब लोग एस्पायर करते हैं आपके साथ काम करने के लिए. पहला 5 या 10 आदमी को कैसे कन्विंस करते हो तुम्हारे साथ काम करने?
So like I said, उसमें तो बड़ी stories है. I have gone and convinced mothers to bring their sons back. I have gone and sat at potential employees' homes while he was taking a nap. वो 15 दिन से हाथ में नहीं आ रहा था. फाइनली उसका एड्रेस मिला, मैं घर पे पहुंच गया. I said, बॉस तेरे बारे में बहुत सुना है, I want to kind of convince you to come and work for me. बोलता नहीं, मेरा सर बहुत दुख रहा है, अभी मैं थोड़ी देर सो जा रहा हूँ. I said, तू सो जा, मैं यहाँ बाहर बैठ के चाय पीता हूँ. Once you're fine, let's have a chat. ऐसा भी मैंने किया है. So I think and today also I'm growing my team with very different kind of skills, but I think convincing people to begin with is less about money and more about what you can do for them. So I think I'll answer this question in two ways. So one, I think when you're building your team, you have to keep in mind that paise sabke paas hote hain. What it is that you will contribute this person's growth story professionally and financially is very important. And is that the right fit? And that is very important, because there are some people who will be convinced about technology. There are some people who will be convinced about learning. There are some people who will not look for anything but saying, if I am switching jobs, mera financial growth kitna hoga. So everybody is a different profile. What you need, what the other person needs, and how do you build the right match is very important to kind of building your team. And I think more important than all of these factors is the right cultural fit. So one of the things that I pride of at Net for Nuts is, and I think Ahmedabad has a lot to do with it, is if you look at an IT company, the average tenure for a person in an IT company is less than maybe 2 years, average. I have people who have worked with Net for Nuts for 10 years, 12 years of their life. My 4 direct reportees have all been with me for over a decade. And these are from different factors. They're not just technology. So catering to them, making sure that they are constantly challenged and engaged, and they get a lot of satisfaction from what they do. And I think, for that, giving them the ownership of what they do, and comes with ownership is the credit. That I think is my formula to kind of making sure that they feel, very belonged.
कहीं ना कहीं सपना दिखाना पड़ता है और उस सपने की हिस्सेदार बनाना पड़ता है. देसी भाषा में ये हो रहा है ना. तो
सपना तो दिखाते हैं, सब लोग दिखाते हैं, बट सपना साकार करने में कभी वो अपना हाथ पकड़ते हैं, कभी हम उनका हाथ पकड़ते हैं. The idea is that we are a team, and only when you allow them to take those kind of liberties to make mistakes. Again, like I said, I have not done everything right. मैंने भी काफी सब mistakes किए. Some of them have been expensive, some of them haven't, some of them I have been learning from. But I think unless you give them the same opportunity, that yes, you make your mistakes, you learn, I am there. If there is something you need, bounce it off me. Even then you go wrong, I am still okay with it, because somewhere that has contributed to, you becoming a better, team member. So that's on the building your initial 5 people in the team. The second part of that question was, how do you get your first 5 customers? I think very challenging, because when you're a complete unknown, when you have no track record, people, even if you go to them with the right solution, there is a lot of risk for them to accept you. And this is not about money. This is because, see, when you are selling, depends on who you are selling to, of course. But if you are selling to other businesses and your solution, fits into their whole business cycle, I'll give you a simple example, right? Selling to Vodafone, the interesting thing was, not the technology piece. Why Vodafone bought our services was because the end user experience we were able to give 5 times better than anybody else in the industry. So for them, because our brand Net for Nuts wasn't known and is, won't know. So we were the largest railway service providers in India, and yet nobody knew about Net for Nuts, because we were powering railway services behind Idea, behind Vodafone, behind Airtel. So what was important for all these companies was that when a customer sends PNR space the number and you get a bad response, it is Airtel's brand that gets spoiled. So they were very picky in terms of who they wanted to work with in the backend. And so if you understand that problem, then you propose a solution accordingly. At the same time, if I look at my first 5 clients, technology risk was very high. Performance risk was even higher. Some of them said, I don't even need your solution. Why should I buy this? So I think all of these present very different situations. And each situation you will have to find and understand the customer's mindset. So some of these solutions, in those days, hardware was very expensive. And people saying, तुम्हारा solution चलाने के लिए तो यार इतना powerful hardware चाहिए. ये अभी तुम्हारा solution नहीं चलेगा तो हम क्या करें? So I said, I'll bring the hardware, I will install it, you market this solution. Nahi chala, 6 months, no questions asked, I'll take everything back. In fact, the whole ride for us with the 10, 12 years of mobile business was all about zero investment for my clients. I said, I will bet on the business that all my relationships were revenue share. आप पैसा बनाओगे तो मैं पैसा लेके जाऊंगा आपसे. So again, you again understand the customer's mindset. One very strong suggestion I give to so I also advise a lot of startups now. I am some of them I am the board, some of them I invest. So one of the key things I always like to propose to these startups is that you raise funds, right? आप पैसे किस लिए लाते हो? So there is product development के लिए पैसे चाहिए, and then also you need money to kind of take this money, spend on marketing, travel, customer acquisition. Eventually you want to acquire customers. I have a very revolutionary view on this. I say you identify your top 5 customers. If you are building a product, where are you going to sell this? उसमें से 5 लोगों को you involve and you give them what is called sweat equity. Saying, well, I'll give you the product, I'll also give you a part, percentage, because आप VC से पैसा लेते हो, खर्चा करते हो और customer acquire करते हो. तो might as well go to the customer and say, boss, I will VC को तो equity देते हो, तो VC को equity मत दो, customer को थोड़ा equity दो. If he is invested in your business, he will help you shape your product first of all, because you only know so much about your product. The guy who's going to buy it knows everything about the product, what he wants, why he wants it, कितना पैसा देगा, कैसे देगा, पीछे का infrastructure क्या चाहिए, all of that, right? So if you involve your customer in your company, it works beautifully well, because he'll also vouch for being your first 5 customers. So that is one way to kind of look at it. The other way is, get your references, build a good advisory board. I think that has really helped me. When I was building my company, this was an advice I was given. So just like I had an ESOP plan, I actually had a board of advisors, all of whom I had parted with some equity for. And it was their credibility that I used to leverage. So having a good advisory board, they may or may not be on your board of directors, but an advisory board, and if they are invested some way in your company, that credibility goes a long way.
Wonderful, wonderful. So a lot of people are thanking you for giving this new gyan of converting your solution buyer to an investor. It's a good model for bundling this thing. One question I will take to answer is people are asking how student startup and innovation policy is different from CED and other interventions of government of Gujarat. मैं आपको सबको बता देना चाहता हूँ, बाकी सब जगह पे स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस की सपोर्ट की स्कीम जरूर है, और जहां पे आपकी प्रोडक्ट बन गया है उसको कैसे बेचना है, उसकी व्यवसाय की स्ट्रेटेजी क्या होगा, उसके बारे में सपोर्ट सिस्टम है. हम तो गर्भ धारण की अवस्था में जो बच्चा मर जाता है ना इंक्यूबेशन की पीरियड में आइडिया का, उसको बचाने के काम करते हैं. तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं, जब आपके दिमाग में कोई आइडिया है उसको प्रूफ ऑफ कंसेप्ट बनाना, उसका मिनिमम वायबल प्रोडक्ट बनाना, फिर वो आइडिया दिमाग से धरती पे आना और उसके बाद 1-2 साल जिंदा रहना, ये जो कहानी का जो जर्नी है ना, यहीं पे हम काम करते हैं. तो हम थोड़ा एक कदम पीछे हैं और हम लोग कोई इक्विटी कुछ नहीं मांगते. हम तो फ्री का सरकारी ग्रांट रिसोर्स देते हैं. ये आप जैसे लोग जो टैक्स पे करते हो, उन्हीं टैक्स पेयर का पैसा से ही एक पब्लिक मनी है, इसीलिए हम लोग रिस्क लेते हैं और इनोवेटर्स को बोलते हैं आपकी सबसे रिस्की जो एरिया है, जो गर्भ से जमीन तक आने का जो आइडिया का जो गर्भ है, वहां से जमीन तक आने का जो जर्नी है, उसमें हम लोग सपोर्ट करते हैं. 1000 टीम्स को फ्लैट 2 लाख रुपए का ईयरली ग्रांट मिलता है, जिसमें वो आइडिया को प्रूफ ऑफ कंसेप्ट बना सकते हैं. पैटेंट फाइल करने के लिए भी 1000 इनोवेटर्स को हम फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट देते हैं, एवरेज 25,000 टू स्टार्ट विद. अगर आप PCT फाइल करना चाहते हो, अदर कंट्रीज में करना चाहते हो, तो 1 लाख तक फाइनेंशियल मिलता है. और बाय द वे ये भारत में पहला स्कीम है जो अपफ्रंट पैसा देता है आइडिया की बेसिस पे. जब आपके दिमाग में सिर्फ एक स्केच हो तभी आपको सपोर्ट मिलता है. ऐसा नहीं कि आप बना के दिखाओ फिर हम देंगे, ऐसा नहीं है. तो काफी इनोवेटिव है ये, हम इसीलिए कर रहे हैं ताकि पाइपलाइन बड़ा हो. चिराग साहब जैसे और भी हजारों लोग आए, खाली हिम्मतनगर क्यों, कच्छ से भी आ सकते हैं. 2-3 स्टूडेंट कच्छ से पूछ रहे हैं कि भाई हमारे आसपास भी कोई एंटरप्रेन्योर की कहानी बताओ, तो होंगे आपके पास भी. और वो लोग मैं देखा यहाँ पे चैट बॉक्स पे, वो दोनों लोग बोल रहे हैं कि यार हम दोनों कच्छ से, तो क्यों नहीं मिल के काम करें. तो अच्छी बात है. ये वेबिनार सीरीज का एक उद्देश्य ये भी है, जिनकी दिल में चिंगारी है उनको जोड़े. ऐसे लोग जिनको कुछ ना कुछ करना है, और आप सबका ईमेल आईडी भी हमारे पास है, तो हम आपको कनेक्ट करेंगे। टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ दिस डिस्कशन में 2-3 सवाल चिराग से पूछना चाहूंगा कि ये जो आप लोकलाइज प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग की बात कर रहे हैं, इंडिया में डॉक्टर सैम पीटरसबर्ग एक बात कहते हैं कि उनकी प्रेडोमिनेटली कहते हैं कि दुनिया के जो बेहतरीन ब्रांड्स हैं, द बेस्ट ब्रांड्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड आर ट्राइंग टू सॉल्व द प्रॉब्लम्स of people who actually doesn't have a problem. These are corporates and others, right? और जिनकी समस्या है, जैसे 100 करोड़ जनता को समस्या है, उनकी प्रॉब्लम कोई नहीं करता। मतलब अगर आपकी एलडी इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में कोई बच्चा अच्छा पढ़ता है तो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट में चला जाता है, गूगल में चला जाता है, अच्छा कंपनी में जाता है, जाना भी चाहिए, पेरेंट्स का एस्पिरेशन है। और फिर वो लोग दुनिया भर की एआई, मशीन लर्निंग, उसकी प्रॉब्लम किसके लिए सॉल्व करते हैं उनको भी नहीं पता रहता है। तो हमारे जो सामाजिक समस्याएं हैं, जो तकनीकी लेवल पे सॉल्व हो सकता है, जब आपने कोविड की देखा होगा, जब अहमदाबाद में पहला वीक का लॉकडाउन हुआ, तो अहमदाबाद म्युनिसिपल कमिश्नर ने ट्वीट किया कि डाटा एनालिटिक्स पे कोई स्टार्टअप अहमदाबाद में है क्या, जो हमारा डाटा को एनालाइज करके बताएगा कि किधर किधर लॉकडाउन को स्ट्रेट करना है। आप सोचिए कि डाटा एनालिटिक्स को रॉकेट साइंस नहीं है, लेकिन डाटा एनालिटिक्स को ऐसे वायरस फैलने के टाइम में एक सामाजिक समस्या के साथ जोड़ के म्युनिसिपलिटी में सोल्यूशन करने वाले एंटरप्रेन्योर नहीं है, एआई वाला एंटरप्रेन्योर तो है। तो ये बड़ा अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं है कि इस देश में जितना बड़ा प्रॉब्लम उतना बड़ा मार्केट। तो किस तरीके से आप देखते हैं कि जिस हमारे पास इतने चैलेंजेस हैं, उसको लिवरेज करके एक बड़ा मार्केट क्रिएशन भी हो सकता है और एंटरप्रेन्योर्स काम कर सकते हैं?
सो आई थिंक ये इसका आंसर मेरे पास नहीं है, लेकिन सी मैं आई एम अगेन फर्म बिलीवर के ऑल ऑफ दिस इज अबाउट स्ट्राइकिंग द राइट बैलेंस, सो जिसको इक्विलिब्रियम बोलते हैं, राइट? लोग गूगल और माइक्रोसॉफ्ट में काम क्यों करते हैं? बिकॉज उसके पास बड़े प्रॉब्लम्स है, बड़ी बैक चेकबुक है, और तुमको प्लेटफॉर्म भी मिल जाता है, रिसोर्सेज भी मिल जाते हैं, बिकॉज दे कैन अफोर्ड टू इन्वेस्ट इट, बिकॉज दे आर गेटिंग दैट काइंड ऑफ रेवेन्यू। I think इसका also, see, we are as India, we are one of the largest consumption stories globally, right? आप स्विगी को देखो, even forget Swiggy is a local bond company. Uber को देखो, we are the largest market for Uber outside of the US. So हमारी growth story is phenomenal. So Swiggy is no different, right? It is giving every international company a run for their money, and yet it is way ahead. So I think ऐसी 50 कंपनी हो जाएगी तो there will be a lot of opportunity in India too, right? But this is also a matter of, because ये US का पूरा मार्केट आप देखो तो ये तो 300 मिलियन है, यहाँ पर 1.3 बिलियन लोगों का मार्केट है, राइट? तो if you are able to address that opportunity, and if you are able to address it at even at a lesser price, but the volume more than make up for the price, people will start investing more in betting for products that are India. Another example, right? ये इंडिया में because computers weren't prevalent, सबके घर पे कंप्यूटर नहीं था, connectivity नहीं थी, so India was one of the first markets which had a mobile first strategy. आपको अगर याद होगा, काफी सालों पहले Flipkart had shut down its website. Flipkart ने बताया था कि हम दो चीज मेंटेन ही नहीं करेंगे, हम सिर्फ मोबाइल पे ऑर्डर्स लेंगे. So that was a big statement saying यार इंडिया में तो मोबाइल फर्स्ट ही चलता है. Now if you look at globally, we work for a lot of these companies where we are building their products. So the global model is also now mobile first, because more and more people are accessing more and more services on the mobile. So I think India definitely has a lot of promise in terms of flipping this whole scale, that हमारी needs जो समझेगा, हमको जो business model approval के साथ यहाँ successful होगा, that is bound to be a success everywhere else. So I think it's a matter of time, and it is also a matter of enough people attempting and getting successes out of the Indian consumption story that will flip the scales.